Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Steely Dan, a deep dive. If you want part 1, please click above. Oh, yeah. Man of a certain age. I think I threw something out just stretching. Why yes, I am getting kind of punchy. Alright Steely Dan fans, where were we? Oh, that's right. In May of 1976, the band released The Royal Scam. On this album, Becker and Fagan make it official. They list themselves solely as Steely Dan. There are many other studio geniuses included on this album, including Larry Carlton on guitar and Chuck Rainey on bass. Given the arrival of Larry and Chuck, Walter performs less on this album than he did before. Both Walter and Donald believed they should get the best musicians possible for these arrangements, and it wasn't always them. By now, Walter and Donald were operating in a sort of alternate capacity. If one of the studio musicians tried several times unsuccessfully to nail a song, or failed to capture the feel of a song, only then would Walter or Donald step in and play. This hideous album cover was originally conceived for the 1975 Van Morrison album Mechanical Bliss. Given that title, it kind of makes sense, I guess. Gee, I can't understand why Van the Man passed. I will say seeing a guy with nowhere else to sleep on this park bench is pretty evocative of the royal scam that's referred to in the album, but it's still kind of an odd choice for a cover. The album kicks off with Kid Charlemagne, coincidentally my favorite track on this album. The song was inspired by Owsley Stanley. Owsley is the chemist who brought LSD to the hippies and became a champion in their eyes. The lyrics to the entire song are brilliant, but my favorite line is the charming call and response that Fagan takes himself with, "Is there gas in the car? Yes, there's gas in the car," which refers to a time that Owsley got busted in his car because he ran out of gas. From that point on, every time Owsley got in a car with someone, he would make sure there was gas in the car. The Caves of Altamira is a thoughtful tune about a man who, when he sees the cave paintings in Altamira, flashes back not just to memories of his own life, but to ancient times as the artist in him connects to the original inspiration of the cave paintings artist. In the end of the song, the man steps out of the cave and back into the sun of his present reality. It is such a well-crafted song. Don't Take Me Alive sees a criminal holed up with a case of dynamite, having a standoff with agents of the law. Becker and Fagan unleash some of their best lyrics, and the early part of the chorus, where those beautiful harmonies back Fagan's voice, is dynamite. Sign In Stranger is an underrated track, with impeccable piano work from Paul Griffin, who was Bob Dylan's piano player on Highway 61 Revisited, and very understated and tasty guitar work from Elliot Randall. The sci-fi song concerns a futuristic planet full of murderers and thieves, where you can go to get your freak on. What happens on Mizar 5 stays on Mizar 5. The song The Fez has the distinction of being the only Steely Dan track up to this point with a third credited writer, Paul Griffin, who also plays organ on the track. Speaking of organs, I believe The Fez may be about wearing a condom. No, I'm never going to do it without the fez on. Come on, fellas, be responsible. Put a fez on. Side 2 kicks off with Green Earrings, which concerns a petty thief who stole his lady's beloved jewelry. In his defense, they are of rare design. This album is seen by many as Steely Dan's best guitar album, and the tag team guitar work done on Green Earrings by Denny Diaz on the first solo and Elliot Randall on the second is one of many reasons why. Green Earrings is basically a funk song, and it cooks. Haitian Divorce is next. The talkbox guitar, played by Dean Parks, is the big star of this song, as is what sounds like a synth flute that comes in on the chorus. Those two instruments really elevate the composition above its sleepy Caribbean rhythm. Haitian Divorce immortalizes the days in the 70s when a married person, in the song's case a wife, could go to Haiti without their spouse, who's still back in the US, and get a quickie divorce. While in Haiti, though, the woman parties, meets a guy, and things happen. Back home, she makes up with her husband, only for them to later discover that she has given birth to a half-Haitian child. Becker and Fagan learned about Haitian divorces from their engineer, Elliot Shiner, who received one that took all of 5 minutes. Everything You Did features the great line, "Turn up the Eagles, the neighbors are listening," which references something Becker once yelled at his girl during a fight. She apparently loved the Eagles and played them all the time, much to his playful annoyance. The rivalry between the Eagles and Steely Dan was friendly, though. The Eagles even immortalized Steely Dan in the song Hotel California, with the line, They stab it with their steely knives, but they just can't kill the beast. Glenn and Don didn't want to be too on the nose. Album ender and title track The Royal Scam details the arrival in NYC of Puerto Rican immigrants who are quick to discover that the American dream is nothing more than the titular royal scam. The royal scam, though, perpetuates itself because when these immigrants write home, they can't help but put on a brave face and perpetuate the myth of how good things are over here. As I said, my favorite track on this is Kid Charlemagne, and I think if you enjoy that track, you would like the rest of the music on this album. In September of 1977, the band released Asia. This is the album all the kids talk about. This is Steely Dan's masterpiece. This is me defying you not to like this album. It really is a flawless LP. I guess you could call this the birth of yacht rock? Yeah, can you get me on a conference call with Rupert Holmes and Jimmy Buffett? I just want to go over some dates. Black Cow is a wonderful kickoff to the band's most sophisticated album to date, but the song has been around at least as long as the Katy Lied sessions. I have an album of outtakes and demos from Katy Lied, and there are 2 attempted versions of Black Cow on that. The song references a relationship that has a massive blow-up in a luncheonette, hence the line, "Drink your big black cow and get out of here." Black Cow is a sort of chocolate malted or milkshake. It's a soft drink that varies by region. Musically, I really love Victor Feldman on this track. He plays a sweet keyboard solo that almost has a Milt Jackson feel. Very vibey. Title track Asia features Steve Gadd on drums, and the heavy double kick drum madness that happens sounds like it would be out of place, but it really works. This track and the album title is the natural development of Donald Fagen's infatuation with all things Asian that started as far back as Bodhisattva. Denny Dias yet again shows his virtuosity as he plays guitar voicings that are impossible to play. And just when you think you know everywhere that this track is going, the legend Wayne Shorter shows up and blows his heart out. Asia relaxes, takes its time, and really cooks. Up next is Deacon Blues. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached my favorite song on this album. Deacon Blues is perhaps the best song ever written about a loser. Even the losers get lucky sometime, Tom Petty. I'm a Loser, The Beatles. Loser by Beck. One of the most beautiful songs ever written about a loser, telling the story of a suburban guy who dreams of escaping his dead-end life and becoming a devil-may-care jazz musician who plays sax, drinks Scotch whiskey, and dies behind the wheel. It's not a dissimilar dream to that which Fagan and Becker shared in their youth. This guy's long-shot dream may never happen. But regardless, in Deacon Blues he's given himself a nickname every bit as grandiose as that of the Crimson Tide. Incidentally, Deacon Jones was a well-known football player then, and Fagan liked that Deacon was 2 syllables, just like Crimson. The opening has Larry Carlton's guitar and Victor Feldman's Fender Rhodes, playing the same chords, layered with Pretty Purdy's cymbals. It's the perfect intro. Using jazz chord changes rather than block rock chords, Becker and Fagan wrote the perfect launching pad for a killer tenor sax solo played by Pete Chris Lieb. Pete was in Johnny Carson's Tonight Show band, and Becker and Fagan loved the way he played as they cut to commercials. I don't want to make this whole episode about Deacon Blues. I mean, I want to, but I won't. But if you listen to one song off this album, I have to insist you make it Deacon Blues. Side 2, track 1, the power slide, goes to Peg. Welcome to the one song everyone knows on this album, and it's glorious. What's that? Why yes, that is Michael McDonald singing close harmony on the chorus, sounding like a yacht rock angel. Michael McDonald's voice is layered so many times, and his voice is so harmonically perfect that he really sounds like a keyboard. There should be a Michael McDonald button on synthesizers now. Peg's delectable strangulated guitar solo is played by Jay Graydon, and it totally makes the song. If you think that solo was easy to pull off, I believe 7 studio guitarists died trying to nail that solo before Jay took over. Jay is a very talented guitarist and keyboardist who's played and written with many artists. In fact, Jay Graydon co-wrote the song After the Love Is Gone with Earth, Wind & Fire. Home at Last is an underrated bluesy song set to the Purdy shuffle that seems at first to be a straight-up narrative about Ulysses, until you build it out to be about the life of a musician, the temptations on the road, sirens and whatnot. Is he settling down? Is he settling down with a siren? I Got the News is the second of 2 songs on Asia that date back to the Katy Lied sessions. It was not out of the ordinary for Becker and Fagan to simply cast a song aside if they tried a few times to capture it. They would often return to songs with a different band lineup and nail it, as they did here. I Got the News is a love/sex song featuring a great guitar solo from Walter Becker himself. This energetic song wound up being the B-side to the Peg single. The minor blues track Josie expounds on all the things that are going to go down when Josie comes home from what I can only believe is either a juvenile detention center or a convent. Either way, shit's going to get crazy. What that girl needs is church and plenty of it. Studio stud Jim Keltner lays down rock-solid drumming, augmented by overdubbed percussion, including a garbage can lid. Josie contains probably Walter Becker's best guitar solo on this album or ever. And this is one of Steely Dan's most funky tracks on a funky as hell album. Incidentally, I have to mention that in May of 1978, in between the single releases of Deacon Blues and Josie from this album, another Steely Dan single, FM No Static at All, was released. The song was the title song from the movie FM, and it made it to number 22 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. The song is a wonderful attack on the boring-ass playlists at most FM stations. Irving Azoff produced the film, and as we learned in my soundtracks episode, Irving knows how to get his clients on soundtrack albums. Speaking of which, this song features backing vocals by the Eagles' 3 vocalists, Don Henley, Glenn Frey, and Timothy B. Schmidt. In November of 1980, the band released Gaucho. Given the great success of their masterpiece Asia, you would be excused if you came to Steely Dan cold and thought that Gaucho came before Asia. There was a 3-year gap between 1977's Asia and 1980's Gaucho. Everyone knows about Tom Petty's protracted battle with MCA Records over them trying to raise the price of his Damn the Torpedoes album by $1 as part of their $9.98 Superstar Series pricing. But few remember that Gaucho was also targeted for that pricing increase. Donald and Walter fought, much like Tom Petty did, holding their album back while they did. Unlike Tom Petty, they eventually lost, and Gaucho came out at that higher price. But the higher pricing did not affect sales. Thank you, Irving Azoff. Irving Azoff did some stuff. This LP is stacked with top-drawer studio talent. This album features a who's who on horns, including the Brecker brothers, Tom Scott, and David Sanborn. There are at least 6 guitarists, including Larry Carlton, Rick Derringer, and Mark Knopfler, and several drummers, including Steve Gadd, Pretty Purdy, and Jeff Porcaro. There are only 7 tracks on Gaucho, but they are all substantial, and each creates its own vibe. Incidentally, there is a bootleg called The Lost Gaucho that is well worth tracking down. Babylon Sisters concerns a man who is way too old to be partying with one young woman, let alone 2. And he knows it. His friends all tell him, but it doesn't matter. He can't resist that brief rush of youthful vigor that they give him, and he finds himself right back at it, imploring the girls again to shake it, baby. Neither Becker nor Fagan play on Babylon Sisters, both insisting they didn't have the technique for what the song required. How professional is that? Hey 19 chronicles an older man's relationship with a younger woman. I smell a series. But before you go painting Becker and Fagan with the cancel culture brush, the song's subject is over 18, and as far as I know, not related to the song's narrator. The highlight of the song for me are the deliciously decadent lines in the bridge. The Cuervo Gold, the fine Colombian, make tonight a wonderful thing. The track Glamour Profession is a veritable who's who of cocaine celebrities, featuring thinly and not so thinly veiled references to, among others, Hollywood Henderson and DJ turned drug pilot Russ O'Hara. The lyrics, illegal fun under the sun, plays out to more excellent drumming from Steve Gadd here, underneath lovely horn arrangements by Tom Scott. The title track Gaucho is the only song on this album in which Becker and Fagan share a writing credit with pianist Keith Jarrett. But they didn't write it together. Oh no. When Gaucho was released, Jarrett sued Steely Dan because the song Gaucho sounded an awful lot like Jarrett's tune, Long As You Know You're Living Yours. For their part, Becker and Fagan acknowledged Jarrett's influence, and he was co-credited. The song is a very funny snapshot of a gay couple who live atop the Custer Dome, a very high-class place. It is one of their funniest songs, and was written with their own amusement in mind, and should not be taken literally. The beautiful female backing vocals are provided by Leslie Miller, Valerie Simpson, and Patty Austin. Next up is the song Time Out of Mind, and son, you better be ready for love, because this song sounds gorgeous. From the layered vocals to the funk horns, this song has a delicious groove that won't let go. The guitar solo on Time Out of Mind is played by Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits, whose guitar work on Sultans of Swing really impressed Becker and Fagan. The song itself seems to chronicle drug addiction as its narrator chases the dragon, but rather than being a warning of the dangers of the drug, it almost reads like a love letter to heroin. Heroin is described alternately as the light in his eyes, perfection and grace, and the smile on his face. Let me just be serious for a second. Kids, don't ever pay for drugs. My Rival is a very underrated song on this album, whose tale of jealousy and paranoia probably would have been better appreciated on side 1. Rick Derringer plays the song's 8-bar introduction, but Rick couldn't play the guitar solo to Fagan's satisfaction. So that is Steve Kahn playing the Hubert Sumlin-like solo. Quick story. One night when I was out DJing, someone actually requested My Rival and was happily blown away that I had the Gaucho album with me. I would usually bring this album with me because there's a time of night out in a bar when this album sounds perfect. Midnight to 4 a.m., anywhere in there. Give it a try tonight. Album closer Third World Man wasn't supposed to be on this album, but when the track they had recorded for this album, the second arrangement, was accidentally erased by an engineer, they had to use this old unused song from the Royal Scam sessions. Guitarist Larry Carlton, who was on the Royal Scam sessions, was thrilled to learn that he could be on the Gaucho album without ever flying out to New York to play on it. Third World Man is a somewhat subdued album ender, focusing on a soldier who is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Lyric-wise, there's a line in Italian towards the end of the song that I believe was written wrong on the liner notes. I'm half Italian, on the good side. Il era del terzo mondo. I believe it's supposed to say ALL''ERA. All'era del terzo mondo, which is to the era of the third world man, which is almost like a cheers, to the era, which make wonderful lyrics to sing to this third world man, poor soul that he is. Steely Dan wouldn't come out with another album for 19 years. But in October of 1982, the Nightfly, Donald Fagen's solo album, was released. I consider the Nightfly to be an unofficial Steely Dan album. Walter is not on here, it's just Fagan, but nevertheless, it takes where they were headed on Gaucho and takes the next logical step to turn in a very smooth yet nostalgic album. All Donald and Walter solo albums are solid, but the Nightfly is exceptional, so I'm only going to focus on this solo album for Becker or Fagan. To me, this is also the greatest of all Steely Dan related album covers. He is a late night DJ. The album cover on the table just visible there is Sonny Rollins and his contemporary leaders. However, being the geek that I am, I noticed that that is not the record that is on the turntable. Whoever this album is by, they're on the Riverside label, which looks very different from the contemporary label. Kickoff track IGY stands for International Geophysical Year, which was a scientific project conducted in the mid-50s that brought several countries together in the Brotherhood of Science. The chorus, "What a wonderful world this will be, what a beautiful time to be free," is meant to be taken ironically. Great scientific advances were expected by the bicentennial. Jump to 1982 when this album came out, and even 45 years later to today. And while some people may wear spandex jackets, there is no undersea train that takes you from New York to Paris in 90 minutes. IGY is the standout track from the Nightfly, and it was the first single from the album, released a month before the album's release, and it went top 40. Green Flower Street may be evocative of Miles Davis's On Green Dolphin Street, but the song is entirely Donald Fagen. One of the prettiest tracks on a gorgeous album, Green Flower Street is my deep cut off this album. It's very underrated. Ruby Baby is a faithful and loving updating of an old Drifters song done with real panache. How good is Ruby Baby? Well, this is the first time on Pop Culture Graveyard that I ever used the word panache, so you tell me. The Drifters original is very doo-wop, but this jam couldn't be further from the street corner. It's a beautifully smooth updating, done in classic Steely Dan style. Maxine is a lovely song dripping with 50s nostalgia, and the vocals to Maxine, which are some of the most beautiful on the album, are sung in a real Four Freshmen style. Every time Fagan sings the word Manhattan, I can't help but think about how Becker and Fagan were the satirical Rodgers and Hart of our time. New Frontier is another standout track from this album, detailing a party thrown by an awkward teenager in his father's bomb shelter. New Frontier has some of the best lyrics on the album, referencing both Tuesday Weld and Dave Brubeck. The phrase New Frontier was used by John F. Kennedy when he accepted the Democratic Party nomination. There's a great video for this song. There are very few official videos for anything Steely Dan related, so I'm going to put the video linked below. The title track, The Nightfly, is all about a late-night DJ for the fictional WJAZ, who plays music, takes listener phone calls, and does on-air commercials, all the while battling boredom, loneliness, and regret. The station supposedly offers jazz and conversation from the foot of Mount Belzoni. The Caribbean flavor on the Goodbye look is delightful, and album closer Walk Between the Raindrops is bouncy and fun, and even has a little TV game show organ on it. The Nightfly was well received by critics and went platinum, so this album was welcomed with open arms by all Steely Dan fans. For anyone who's exhausted all of Steely Dan's early albums and is looking to go further, I direct you to the Nightfly first, before you check out the later Steely Dan albums once they reformed. Incidentally, if you see this album on vinyl, check the dead wax. You're looking for the initials RL, which stands for Robert Ludwig, who mastered the album and cut the lacquer. I'm lucky in that this has RL on both sides of the wax, and it's one of the best sounding albums in my entire collection. Incidentally, anyone wanting Nightfly flavored t-shirts, please head on over to dave.threadless.com and get yours for the discerning Steely Dan fan. dave.threadless.com. In 2000 and 2003, Becker and Fagan came back with two more Steely Dan albums, Two Against Nature and Everything Must Go. Don't worry, we're gonna talk about them. The cover photo for Two Against Nature was taken by photographer Michael Northrop. The photo is of shadows of he and his wife Pam, so that picture is not of Walter and Donald. Two Against Nature kicks off with Gaslighting Abby, which takes its name from the movie Gaslight. What do you mean you haven't seen Gaslight? We watched that film together. Don't tell me you've forgotten. You're so silly. Gaslight. Once the song starts, you'll immediately be like, oh, Steely Dan is back. Becker and Fagan make slipping back into their sound seem so easy. It features a great sax solo by Dave Tofani, and the song asks the lyrical question, how do you dispose of an unwanted third party after the menage a trois is over? The suburbs, am I right? What a Shame About Me is a song about a substance abuser, and it sounded really nice, until I realized the verses sounded like a really slow version of Dancing in the Streets. The song does feature some really tasty guitar work from Walter Becker, who seems to really enjoy playing on a Steely Dan album again, since his guitar work is featured throughout. The rhythm of the title track is nuts. Two Against Nature might be the most infectious song on this album. Call me crazy, but I love the sound of a Rhodes piano. Just hearing it occasionally peek out from underneath the piano and clavinet is enough for me. The horns on this are deftly arranged, and it's a really solid track. Almost Gothic is my favorite song on this album, and well worth the price of admission. I think it details a guy who falls in love with either a really sweet goth girl or a bewitching dominatrix. But either way, the song works and the guy's happy. Jack of Speed's title shows the typical Steely Dan sense of humor, as it's very close to jack off speed, but the phrase actually comes from William Burroughs, who meant it as the self-destructive side of human beings, the side that tempts them to flirt with death. The sound of Donald Fagen playing a Wurlitzer is everything. And once you add an irresistible horn part as a sweetener, this is another solid track. And that's why it was the second single from the album. The incestual lyrics of Cousin Dupree might get the band canceled today, but they wouldn't write it today. The risque lyrical content of this track aside, I've just never felt this track at all. If you're curious about Two Against Nature, I'd check out Almost Gothic and Jack of Speed. If you don't like them, this ain't for you. 2003's Everything Must Go is my least favorite Steely Dan album, but it has a few unique touches. For this album, the boys went back to using analog tape as opposed to digital. This LP also features a band, rather than just a collection of studio musicians. Rarer still, the song Slang of Ages features the first ever Walter Becker lead vocal in their entire triple-decade career. It's fine, but I could have waited longer. The Last Mall is a basic blues workout. Things I Miss Most is a List song that's a little too on the nose for the usually cryptic Steely Dan. Blues Beach is a bouncy track with some wonderfully off-kilter lyrics. about a guy who dreams of escaping to the titular refuge, but he has real mixed feelings about the place once he gets there. By the way, the owner of that gorgeous female voice is Carolyn Leonhardt, who shines all over this album. Godwhacker is about an elite squad of commandos who bust into heaven to whack God. He knows what he did. The track Green Book features the boys' imagining of next-level virtual porn. The line, "My life, my love, my third hand rose," not only references the old Fanny Brice song Secondhand Rose, but the words hand and rose bring me back to Rose Darling, which now makes me convinced of that song's masturbatory meaning. Pixieline is one of the few super hooky songs on this album. It's all about how what video games do to teens is not unlike what drugs do to addicts. Aside from more fetching vocals from Carolyn Leonhardt, there's inventive bass playing by Walter and a killer sax solo by Walt Weiskopf, which is as short as it is impactful. The song Lunch with Gina is about drug addiction and has a very clever chorus. "This endless afternoon, it started on the day I met her. Lunch with Gina is forever." Gina is another catchy song, and I think different sequencing might have made this a stronger album. If it had opened up with Green Book, Pixieline, and Lunch with Gina all in a row, rather than burying them on side 2, forget about it. The jazzy fanfare intro to Everything Must Go is amazing, and it has a sort of early 60s post-bop throwback appeal. But unfortunately, once the actual track kicks in, it's rather conservative musically and just plods along. If you're just looking for a best of from Steely Dan and you want some of the hits, I highly recommend Steely Dan's Greatest Hits. This was a double album set from 1978 and contains all of their quote-unquote hits, including what was at the time a new song, Here at the Western World. The new track, which I believe is about a brothel, is a lovely song featuring Michael O'Martian's stellar piano playing. Incidentally, Michael, on the strength of his work with Steely Dan, was tapped by Christopher Cross to produce his multi-Grammy-winning debut album. I don't care who you are, you cannot go wrong with this in your collection. If you find the vinyl for this set out in the wild, you're going to want to check the dead wax on this as well. You're again looking for the RL of Robert Ludwig, because the Robert Ludwig copies of this collection sound amazing. Stay away from the rainbow copies. You're looking for the ones with the sunburst design. That is it for this week on Pop Culture Graveyard. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to support the channel, please visit my Patreon at patreon.com/popculturegraveyard. Thank you for joining me this week. I will see you back next week with some more cool stuff.